It was the fall of 2020, and the pandemic had turned the world upside down. I had been laid off from my retail job, struggling to make ends meet, and decided to start driving for Uber. Nights were quiet, streets empty, and the city felt different, lonely, tense. Almost air, but it paid the bills. Most nights were uneventful, filled with awkward conversations, tipsy passengers, or strange little incidents. But one October night changed the way I looked at rideshare forever. It was just after midnight, when I finished dropping someone off at a small hotel on the outskirts of town. My app pinged almost immediately with a new request. The pickup location was 6 minutes away, in front of a bowling alley attached to a dark, empty strip mall. The name on the ride read Derek. I accepted it, thinking it would be a simple drop-off. The street was quiet, illuminated only by the dim glow of a few parking lot lights. When I arrived, a tall man, maybe 6'2", stood under a flickering light. Hoodie pulled over his head, hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. There were no cars around, no other people in sight. As I pulled up, he finally looked up at me. I rolled down the window. "You Derek?" I asked. He nodded and climbed into the back seat silently, his movements deliberate, calm. I checked the destination, in my April residential area. I'd never been to and confirmed it with him. "Yep, that's right," he said, his voice flat, eerily even. Not drunk, not high, just unsettling. For the first few minutes, he didn't speak. I caught glimpses of him in the rearview mirror. Every time I looked, he was staring straight ahead, his gaze fixed on the back of my head, never moving, never blinking. I tried to break the silence. "Rough night?" I asked. He paused. "Just needed to get out of there." "Out of where?" I pressed. "Doesn't matter," he said, and that was it. We drove in silence, the streets growing darker and emptier as we approached the destination. The app led us to a secluded area, large yards, dense trees, not a single streetlight. And then, on the right, a house. It looked abandoned, the paint peeling, an overgrown lawn, no lights on, no vehicles in the driveway. "Pull in here," he said abruptly, pointing to the driveway. Hesitating, I obeyed. The ride was technically still in progress, but my gut screamed at me. He stepped out, walked toward the house, but instead of the front door, he vanished around the side. I sat there, paralyzed, debating what to do. Should I leave? Call the police? After a tense 2 minutes, I ended the trip in the app, marking it complete, and began to back out. That's when he returned, walking fast toward the car, hands empty, a strange expression twisting his features. I unlocked the doors instinctively, not wanting to confront him, and he slid into the back seat again. "Take me to the other place," he said. "What other place?" I asked, my voice tight. "Just drive." "I'll tell you," he replied flatly, his eyes never leaving mine in the rearview mirror. "I can't. You need to put it in the app," I said. He didn't answer. After a tense silence, he finally said, "Drive to where you picked me up." The ride back was unbearable. He didn't speak, but I could feel him watching me, studying me. I tried to lighten the mood. "Tough night." "You could say that," he muttered. When we arrived back at the strip mall, I parked under the same dim light where I'd picked him up. He leaned forward, looking at me directly, and asked, "Ever wonder how you're gonna die?" I froze, then laughed nervously. "Not really. Something I think about." He didn't laugh. He leaned back, calm, deliberate, and said, "I think about it all the time." Without another word, he opened the door, stood half in and half out, and said slowly, "You picked the wrong guy tonight." Then he walked into the shadows behind the bowling alley. I sat there for a long time, too shaken to move. When I got home, I checked the trip history in the app. Something was wrong. The name Derek had vanished. There was no profile picture, no trip history. It was like the ride never existed. I called Uber support, but they told me the trip data was unavailable. Maybe a crash, maybe a canceled ride. I knew what I'd seen. I knew what he'd said. Even now, every time I drive late at night or pick up a silent passenger, I remember him. That October night when the city felt empty and the shadows felt alive, and I realized how close you can come to something unexplainable. He disappeared into the dark, leaving behind a chill I'll never forget, and the memory of a warning I'll never understand. I've driven for Uber for years, and I've seen the usual chaos: loud groups, couples arguing, even people crying in the back seat, but nothing, and I mean nothing, ever came close to what happened in the summer of 2021, a night that still keeps me awake. It was 1:30 a.m., the kind of hour where the city feels half-lit, bars closing, streets quiet, and an eerie calm spreading between stoplights. I had just dropped off a group of screaming college kids and was praying for a peaceful next ride when a request popped up. Name, Chris. Pickup, a narrow side street behind an old strip mall. Weird location, but GPS glitches happen. I drove there and saw a lone figure standing under a flickering street lamp, hoodie up, hands in pockets, staring at his phone like he wasn't waiting for anyone, just existing. I rolled down my window. Chris? He nodded once and slipped silently into the back seat. He wasn't drunk, no smell, no slurred words, just empty. He stared straight ahead, downward slightly, as if listening to something only he could hear. The drop-off was 25 minutes into a quiet suburban area. I didn't mind. The long rides pay well. But 5 minutes in, I noticed something chilling. Chris had his phone in his lap, flashlight on, the beam angled upward toward me. "Everything good back there?" I asked, trying to make it light. A pause. Then a flat, emotionless, "Yeah." He turned it off. For the next 20 minutes, the car was dead silent. No music, no movement, nothing but the hum of the engine and the heavy, suffocating feeling that something was very wrong. Chris didn't fidget, blink much, or look out the window. He just existed in this strange stillness. The neighborhood was even darker than I remembered. No street lights, no porch lights, just black shapes of houses dissolving into night. When GPS said, "You've arrived," I pulled up in front of a completely unlit home. "Is this it?" No response. I turned around. "Hey, this the right place?" Slowly, he nodded. I put the car in park. "All right, man. Have a good night." But he didn't move. He didn't even blink. "Are you okay?" I asked again. He finally opened the door and stepped out. But instead of walking away, he just stood there, body facing the house, door still wide open. Seconds passed, then 20, then a full minute of eerie stillness. I leaned over to say something, but before the words came out, he turned sharply toward me and said, "I need to go back." "Back where?" I asked. He stared at me with hollow eyes. "Where you picked me up." I tried explaining he needed to request a new ride. He didn't answer. Then he whispered, "I can't. They're not gone yet." A cold wave rolled over me. Who's not gone? Nothing. He just stood there breathing heavily, eyes locked on the dark house. Finally, he closed the door and walked toward the porch. I waited until he reached it, then drove off, heart pounding. A few blocks away, I stopped at a 24-hour gas station to calm down and use the bathroom. I swear I locked the car. I was gone maybe 4 minutes, but when I opened the driver door and sat down, Chris was in the back seat. Same hoodie, same empty expression, as if he had never left. My whole body froze. How did you get in?" I whispered. He leaned forward, breath audible near my ear. "Take me back." That was it. No emotion, no explanation. "I'm calling the cops," I said, and grabbed my phone. He spoke again, barely above a whisper. "They're still in the house." Something in his tone didn't sound dangerous. Sounded terrified, desperate, broken. Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I put the car in drive. "Fine," I said. "Tell me, whose house is that?" "My parents," he said. "Do you live there?" "Not anymore." That answer hit me like ice water. The entire ride back he rocked back and forth, muttering, "They're still there. They won't leave. They won't leave." When we arrived, the house was still pitch black. Not a single light. Chris stepped out without a word, walked straight to the front door, and stood motionless, facing it like he was waiting for someone to open it from the other side. I didn't wait. I drove off fast, parked under a streetlight, and sat frozen for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of any of it. Should I call the police? Should I go back? What would I even report? A silent man, who somehow appeared in my locked car, and muttered about people inside a dark house. In the end, I only filed a report with Uber. But not a day passes where I don't wonder what really happened. Whether Chris needed help, whether someone else was in that house, or whether something else followed him into my car that night. If you ever drive at night, if you ever pick up strangers, remember some passengers sit quietly for a reason, and some never really leave. If you want more terrifying true-style horror stories, make sure to like and subscribe before the next ride begins.